I knew my marriage was over the second I saw the way she hugged him. Not a friendly hug. Not the kind you give a coworker you run into by accident. Not even the kind you give an old friend after a long time apart. This was intimate. Familiar. The kind of hug where two people forget the rest of the world exists for a few seconds too long. I was sitting in my truck across the street from the little cafe near downtown, waiting to pick up takeout on my way home. My wife, Lena, had texted me an hour earlier saying she was having dinner with her sister. I wasn't suspicious when she sent it. Why would I be? We'd been married for 6 years. I thought we were solid. We had a routine, a house, shared bills, weekend plans, the usual boring little things that make up a real life together. I trusted her so completely that the idea of checking up on her had never even crossed my mind. Then I saw her walk out of that cafe laughing with some guy I had never seen before. He was tall, clean-cut, dressed like one of those men who always smell expensive. She looked different with him. Lighter. Younger, almost. She touched his arm when she laughed. He leaned down close when she said something. And then, before they went their separate ways, she wrapped both arms around his neck and held him like she didn't want to let go. I felt my stomach drop so fast it was almost physical pain. At first, I tried to explain it away. Cousin. Friend. Maybe a client. Maybe I was overreacting because it caught me off guard. But then he kissed the side of her head, and she smiled in that soft, private way I hadn't seen in months. I should have driven home. I should have confronted her right there. I should have done anything normal. Instead, when she got in her car, I started my engine and followed her. I kept far enough back that she wouldn't notice. My hands were shaking on the wheel so hard I could barely steer. She didn't go toward her sister's apartment. She didn't even head in that part of town. She drove 10 minutes in the opposite direction, through a nicer neighborhood with tree-lined streets and big modern homes, and finally pulled into the driveway of a townhouse complex. I parked across from the entrance and watched. She sat in her car for almost a minute, checking her makeup in the mirror. Then she smiled at herself, grabbed her purse, and walked to Unit 14 like she'd done it 100 times before. She didn't knock. She used a key. A key. I stared at that front door like maybe my brain would suddenly come up with some innocent explanation. A spare key for a friend. Maybe she was helping someone with a pet. Maybe the guy from the cafe lived there and there was some totally reasonable story for why my wife had lied to me, followed another man home, and let herself into his place at 9 o'clock at night. The porch light came on when the door opened. He stood there in a gray t-shirt, smiling before she even stepped inside. He pulled her in by the waist and kissed her. That was the moment the last piece of denial died. I don't know how long I sat there. 10 minutes. Maybe 30. Time stopped making sense. Everything inside me felt cold and hot at once. My chest was tight. My face was burning. My thoughts were racing so fast I couldn't hold on to any one of them long enough to finish it. I wanted to storm in there and drag him through the street. I wanted to slam my fist through my windshield. I wanted to call her parents, call her friends, call every person who had ever looked me in the eye while she was living this second life behind my back. But underneath all that rage was something worse. Humiliation. Because once the shock settled, my brain started replaying the last year of our marriage with brutal clarity. The late work nights. The sudden gym membership. The guarded phone. The way she started sleeping turned away from me. The way she stopped asking how my day was but somehow always had energy to text other people. The weekends she said she needed space or girl time. Every tiny thing I dismissed because I loved her too much to be suspicious suddenly rearranged itself into one ugly, obvious truth. This hadn't just started. I'd been the only idiot not seeing it. At around 11, she finally came out. Her hair was a little messy. Her lipstick was gone. She was smiling down at her phone when she walked back to her car. I ducked lower in my seat like some pathetic criminal and watched her drive away. This time I didn't follow. I already knew enough to destroy me. I didn't need more for that night. When I got home, she was there 20 minutes later, carrying a bottle of wine and acting tired. My sister is a mess, she said, kicking off her shoes. I swear, every time I see her, I leave more exhausted. Then she looked at me on the couch and frowned. You okay? You look weird. That almost made me laugh. We were 10 feet apart in our living room, and suddenly she felt like a complete stranger wearing my wife's face. I asked her how her sister was doing, and Lena launched into this detailed story about some argument, some guy, some drama. Smooth. Effortless. Not even a pause to think. She lied to me like she'd been rehearsing for years. I nodded in the right places. I even handed her a wine glass. That was the part that scared me most. Not her lie. Mine. Because while she sat there on our couch spinning fiction with the confidence of a woman who thought she'd never be caught, something in me turned calm. Not forgiving. Not broken. Focused. I realized in that moment that if I confronted her now, I'd get tears, excuses, trickle truth, maybe even blame. She'd cry and say it meant nothing. She'd swear it just happened once. She'd beg for therapy. She'd admit only what she thought I could prove. And somehow, by the end of the conversation, I'd be the one standing there explaining why I looked at her with distrust. No. If my marriage was going to die, it was going to die in the light. So I played dumb. For the next week, I became the version of her husband she expected. Predictable. Busy. Trusting. I kissed her goodbye in the morning. I texted her from work. I asked about dinner plans. And all the while, I watched. I started small. Phone records on our shared account. A number that showed up over and over again, usually during my work hours. A number saved nowhere I could see. Then credit card statements. Lunches I never knew about. Gas purchases in neighborhoods she had no reason to be in. One hotel charge from 3 months earlier on a Friday afternoon when she told me she was at a spa with friends. That one made me grip the kitchen counter until my knuckles went white. I also did something I never thought I'd do. I looked through her laptop. She had forgotten to log out of her email. At first I found nothing. Then in her deleted folder, buried between store promotions and work receipts, I found messages between her and a man named Aaron. I miss your skin. Last night wasn't enough. He suspects nothing. That last line hit hardest of all. Not because it was cruel, though it was. Not because it was humiliating, though it was that too. But because it told me exactly what I was to both of them. Not a husband. Not a man. Just an obstacle. A fool financing the life she was building with somebody else. I printed every message I could find. Hotel confirmations. Screenshots of call logs. Dates. Times. Addresses. I made copies and put them in a folder in my office drawer at work. Then I hired a private investigator. I didn't tell anyone. Not my brother. Not my best friend. Not even the one person I trust with everything. I wanted facts, not comfort. Proof, not sympathy. 3 days later, the investigator called me and asked if I was sitting down. I said yes, even though I wasn't. He told me my wife and Aaron weren't just having an affair. They'd been seeing each other for almost 11 months. And according to what he'd uncovered so far, they weren't even being careful anymore. They were making plans. The investigator didn't just give me a few blurry photos and vague suspicions. He gave me a full report. When I opened the email attachment at work, my hands were shaking so badly I had to close the office door so no one would notice. Page after page of photos, timestamps, and notes. My wife leaving our house. My wife entering that same townhouse. My wife and Aaron walking through a grocery store together like a normal couple. Him touching the small of her back. Her leaning into him like it was the most natural thing in the world. There were also photos of them at restaurants. At a park. Even one where they were sitting in his car laughing about something. Laughing. While I was at work thinking I had a loyal wife waiting for me at home. But the part that really twisted the knife wasn't the photos. It was the notes the investigator added underneath. Subject appears comfortable together in public. Interaction suggests long-term relationship. Observed discussing future housing options. Future housing options. I stared at that line for a long time. Because suddenly everything started making sense in a way I wish it never had. The random conversations Lena had been starting lately about maybe moving to a smaller place. The way she asked if I'd ever consider selling the house and starting fresh somewhere else. The way she had been acting distant whenever we talked about long-term plans. She wasn't thinking about our future. She was planning hers. And apparently, I wasn't in it. For a moment, I honestly felt like the air had been knocked out of my chest. 11 months. Almost a year of lies. Almost a year of sharing a bed with someone who would leave that same bed to go sleep with another man. The anger came in waves. But something else came with it too. Clarity. Because once the shock passed, I realized something important. Lena thought she was smarter than me. She thought she had built the perfect little double life. Husband at home. Lover on the side. And according to that email she wrote him, he suspects nothing. She was completely confident she would never get caught. That confidence was about to become my biggest advantage. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I started preparing. First, I quietly spoke to a lawyer. I told him everything and showed him the evidence I had. The photos. The messages. The investigator's report. He didn't look surprised at all. Apparently betrayal is one of the most common things he sees. But he did give me one very important piece of advice. Don't blow this up emotionally, he said. Blow it up strategically. He explained exactly what I needed to do. Move some money. Protect certain accounts. Document everything. Make sure that when the truth came out, I would already be 5 steps ahead. So that's exactly what I did. Over the next 2 weeks, I played the role of the clueless husband perfectly. I cooked dinner. I watched movies with her. I asked her about her day. Meanwhile, I was quietly separating finances, copying documents, and saving every single piece of evidence I could find. And the whole time, Lena kept meeting Aaron. Sometimes twice a week. Sometimes more. One night she even told me she was staying over at her sister's place because they were having wine and talking about life. I already knew where she actually was. The investigator had sent me a picture of her car parked outside Aaron's townhouse that same night. That picture did something strange to me. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Something colder. Because by that point, I had already made a decision. If Lena wanted to lie to me for almost a year. If she wanted to laugh with another man while calling me her husband. Then I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to expose everything. And I knew exactly how I was going to do it. Because in 3 weeks, we were hosting a huge barbecue at our house. Friends. Family. Her parents. My parents. About 20 people in total. It was something Lena had planned herself. What she didn't know was that it was about to become the worst day of her life. The barbecue was Lena's idea. She had been talking about it for weeks like it was going to be the highlight of our summer. She made lists. She bought decorations. She even asked me to clean the backyard and set up the patio lights because she wanted everything to look perfect. And I helped her. Every single step. I grilled the meat she picked out. I arranged the chairs. I even helped her carry coolers full of drinks into the yard the morning of the party. If someone had filmed us that day, they would have seen what looked like a completely normal married couple preparing to host friends and family. But inside my head, everything was already set. Because 3 days earlier, I had finished preparing something of my own. A small folder. Inside it were printed photos from the investigator. Screenshots of messages between Lena and Aaron. Dates. Times. Hotel confirmations. Enough proof that nobody in that backyard could pretend it was some misunderstanding. I also made one more decision. I invited Aaron. Not directly. But I sent Lena a message from a fake number earlier that week pretending to be a coworker organizing a group outing that day. According to the investigator, Aaron had mentioned possibly stopping by the neighborhood later that afternoon. I had a feeling curiosity would bring him close enough. And I was right. By late afternoon the backyard was full. My parents were talking near the grill. Lena's parents were sitting under the umbrella table. A few friends were laughing near the cooler. Lena looked happy. Relaxed. She kept smiling at everyone, acting like the perfect host. Watching her almost felt surreal. Because I knew something she didn't. Around 5 o'clock, I stood up and tapped my glass with a fork. Hey, everyone, I said. Before we keep eating, I just wanted to say something quickly. People turned toward me. Conversations faded. Lena looked confused but still smiling. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming, I continued. Family means a lot to me. Honesty means a lot to me too. That was the moment her smile started fading. I walked over to the patio table and picked up the folder. You know, the funny thing about lies, I said calmly, is that they work really well. Until someone starts paying attention. Then I started laying the photos out on the table. One by one. Lena standing outside Aaron's townhouse. Lena kissing him in the parking lot. Lena walking into a hotel with him. At first nobody spoke. Then I heard someone whisper, "What the hell?" Lena's face went completely white. What is this?" she said, her voice shaking. I looked directly at her. "It's the truth," I said. At that exact moment, something else happened. A car slowed down in front of the house. And when I glanced toward the street, I saw a very familiar man sitting behind the wheel. Aaron. He had clearly noticed the crowd and slowed down out of curiosity. Perfect timing. I stepped closer to the fence and raised my voice just enough for him to hear. "Hey Aaron," I called out. His head snapped toward me. "You might as well come say hi," I said. "Everyone already knows about you." Behind me, I heard gasps. And beside the table, Lena looked like her entire world had just collapsed. Aaron froze behind the wheel when I said his name. For a few seconds he just sat there, staring at the yard full of people who were now all turning toward the street. You could almost see the moment it hit him that something had gone very, very wrong. He looked at Lena. Lena looked like she might pass out. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to grab the edge of the table to stay standing. Her eyes kept moving between the photos spread across the patio and the car sitting in front of the house. Someone behind me muttered, "Is that him?" I didn't answer. I just kept looking at Aaron. After a moment he did the only thing a coward can do in that situation, he hit the gas and drove away. A few people gasped. Someone else swore under their breath. Then all eyes turned back to Lena. Her mother looked like she was about to cry. Her father's face had gone red with anger. My brother, who had arrived earlier, was staring at the photos with disbelief. And Lena, she finally broke. "This isn't what it looks like," she said, her voice cracking. I actually laughed. Not a loud laugh. Just a short, tired one. 11 months, I said calmly. Hotel rooms. Messages. Dates. I even know you were planning to move in with him. Her eyes widened. Which told everyone there exactly how accurate that was. "Please," she said, stepping toward me. "We can talk about this privately." "No," I replied. My voice was steady now. Completely steady. "You had 11 months to be honest with me. You chose not to." The yard was completely silent. I gathered the photos back into the folder and placed it on the table. "I'm filing for divorce on Monday," I said. "The paperwork is already ready." That sentence seemed to finally break whatever was left of her composure. Lena started crying, real uncontrollable crying now. But it didn't affect me the way it would have weeks earlier. Because by that point something inside me had already closed. My father stepped beside me and quietly put a hand on my shoulder. Lena's parents were arguing with her in hushed angry voices. Guests were slowly beginning to leave, unsure what else to do. I walked toward the house, then stopped at the door and turned back one last time. "You know the worst part?" I said. Lena looked up through tears. "I actually trusted you." Then I went inside and closed the door. That was 3 months ago. The divorce is almost finalized now. Lena moved out the week after the barbecue. From what I've heard, things with Aaron didn't last very long once the secrecy was gone. Funny how that works. As for me, life is quieter now. Simpler. And honestly, for the first time in a long time, it's peaceful. If this story shocked you, subscribe for real stories about betrayal, secrets, and courtroom karma. And watch the video on your screen. It's just as insane.